right. Do we have quorum? Okay, I'm getting the head nod yes. Welcome. My name is Ed Hermes with the Vision Zero Advisory Committee. Thank you so much. Staff are from the City Manager's Office, Ingram, our Interim Director from the Streets Department, and the rest of Streets Department staff. We appreciate you being here, as well as our wonderful committee members who are volunteering their time to be here. I'm calling this meeting to order. It is 5:03. We're going to move straight on to Don. Don, I think you want to say a few words about roles and speaking times before we get into things. You ready, Don?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Members of the public may speak up to 2 minutes to comment on agenda items to be discussed. Comments must be related to the agenda item and the action being considered by the committee. The committee and staff cannot discuss or comment on matters related to pending investigations, claims, or litigation. Additionally, any member of the public who appears before the committee in their capacity as a lobbyist must, as required by Phoenix City Code, disclose this fact before addressing the committee. General comments that go beyond the scope of the agenda item must be made in the call to the public session at the end of the agenda. City Code requires speakers to present their comments in a respectful and courteous manner. Profane language, threats, or personal attacks on members of the public, council members, or staff are not allowed. The person who violates these rules will lose their opportunity to continue to speak. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Don. We appreciate you being here. Moving on to agenda item 2, approval of the minutes from the June 25th, 2025 meeting. Do I have any discussion or a motion to approve the minutes?
Mr. Chair, I move approval of minutes from last meeting.
Oh, it's been moved. Do I have a second?
I second that.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. It does pass. The meeting minutes have been approved. Moving on to our next agenda item. This is something that we're going to try out today. It's one of our 5 E's, of course, is education. And hopefully everybody here and everybody watching online follows the Phoenix Streets Department, puts out some great educational materials out there, social media and other places, and is really working to get these great videos and education out to every person on our streets and every driver on our streets. And as we'll talk today in some of the later agenda items, every person is impacted by road and traffic violence. And so we wanted to talk and just show one of these wonderful videos. It's short, and as our effort, try to do one of these out of each meeting. It's just part of our effort to get our education out there, so everybody here can talk to their neighbors about it, send them the videos. They're on a really helpful Vision Zero website on the Phoenix Streets Department. So without further ado, Jamie.
We all want to get to our destination safely, so be aware of everything happening around you whenever walking, riding, or rolling along our streets. Most pedestrian and bike crashes happen when drivers are turning. Scan the street for wheels and feet when turning or entering intersections.
Todos queremos llegar a nuestros destinos de manera segura, así que esté atento a todo lo que sucede a su alrededor cuando camine, monte bicicletas o maneje por nuestras calles. La mayoría de los choques de peatones y bicicletas ocurren cuando los conductores de vehículos están girando. Preste atención a los automóviles y a la gente en las calles.
Thank you, Jamie. These videos are on, like I said, the Phoenix website for Vision Zero. Please share them, send them to your friends. As a video mentioned, most crashes are happening when cars are turning. Most pedestrians are being hit when cars are turning. And we unfortunately see that in the news all the time with fatal crashes. And all of us have been impacted. So many of us have been impacted by this. And, recently had a friend who was killed in an intersection crossing the street just last month. And it was tragic here in the city of Phoenix. And we'll talk about it in the Road Safety Action Plan update, the numbers. Every single person, every single number is a family that is forever affected, and a community that's forever affected. And so our goal here, our job here as a Vision Zero Street Safety Committee Advisory Committee is to give advice and to achieve Vision Zero and eliminate all traffic deaths and serious injuries on our streets. Okay, we're going to try to continue this as a series to just continue our efforts to spread the good education. Moving on to our director's update. Brandy Kelso.
Thank you, Chair. I believe that our Assistant City Manager, Inger, would like to say a few words first.
Please.
Chair and members of the committee, I just wanted to come and let you know that we really do appreciate all the efforts that Brandy Kelso has done in the interim role. We have selected a permanent director, Brianna Velez, and she will be, she started actually this week, but she's on vacation, pre-planned vacation. But she will be here for the next meeting that you have. And she is very familiar with the streets department. As you know, she kind of grew up through the streets department and she was our successful candidate. So thank you so much to Brandy for her leadership. I really do think she's helped kind of set a good foundation for Brianna to come in and continue on. So I just wanted to make sure that I acknowledged Brandy and also let you know that Brianna is going to be the director from this point going forward.
Thank you so much. And Brandy, it's been a pleasure working with you. You're always welcome back here at the Vision Zero Committee. I know you're going to be very busy back at the regularly scheduled job, but you're always welcome to come back. And it's been a pleasure to work with you. So thank you so much for your service.
And that's a good point. She is now the official water director.
Oh, congratulations. I figured you were going back to water, but congratulations on being the new director. And I'm hopefully this year journey as this interim streets director has been somewhat fun, and we appreciate having the chance to work with you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Inger. Yes, my time with the streets director, as the streets director, has been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot from the staff, and I shared with many of them last week that they've taught me a lot. I think there's a lot of great professionals in the department that are really working very hard every day to maintain our streets, develop new ideas and be innovative, and then also try to keep us safe. So I think they're a tremendous group of people, and I've been happy to be part of their team over the last year. So I'm real excited for them and Brianna moving forward. And as I tease them, I'll watch from a distance.
That's fair. That's fair.
A couple other updates that we have recently hired our 2 traffic engineer ones. I know that this has been on the committee's list of wanting to know things. And so I want to introduce them to you today. The school safety program is Leonardo. Stand up and wave. And then the traffic calming program is Joseph. Stand up and wave.
Oh.
And so while we're introducing them to you, please don't send them 1,000 things quite yet. They're in training, so they've only been with us a couple weeks, but we're bringing them up very quickly to speed on the things that they're going to be working on related to both school safety and traffic calming. So we're really excited to have them part of our team. Also, just wanted to note that in October, the October meeting has changed to October 22nd. We weren't able to have this room at the other scheduled time, which was the 8th. And so just make sure that that got put on your calendars. I think Jamie has sent out that information, but I want to highlight that for you. Also wanted to give you a couple updates on things that have happened over the last few months. First, on our LPI, the pedestrian leading interval update, we have implemented 4 locations since the last time we met: 32nd Street and Thomas, 7th Avenue and Indian School, 51st Avenue and McDowell, and 67th Avenue and McDowell. I know that that's been a topic of conversation on this committee before, and so wanted to highlight that those had been implemented recently. Also wanted to give you a quick update on our yard sign pilot program. As you remember, this program launched in 2025 in April. We ordered 2,500 signs. We have about 50% of them remaining in our inventory. We have notified all the Phoenix elementary and high schools that signs were available. Some of them took those through their parent associations. We also have a lot of our neighborhood specialists that know about this and are also have those available, as well as at several park locations, our park center, senior center locations. And we've been getting a lot of gratitude from different residents and showing us some signs posted in their front yards. And so that's what you see there on the screen. So a lot of pride in putting these signs out and helping get the message out. That's all I have for an update today, Chairperson.
Thank you so much. Any questions for Interim Director Kelso in her last meeting here? Now's the time, you guys. Any questions? Thank you for the update. Thank you for those LPI updates. I know this committee has been very interested and eager to roll out LPIs as quickly as possible and as widespread as possible. So thank you for that update. Okay, moving on to our next agenda item is a police update. We have with us here Lieutenant Ryan, who is the head of traffic enforcement for Phoenix PD. We really appreciated one of our other E's here, which would be enforcement. Thank you so much for coming down. We always appreciate you having you. We don't want to take up too much of your time, but not looking to have another presentation like last time, which we really appreciated, but appreciate any short update that you might have.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, members of the public. I'm Lieutenant Ryan with the Phoenix Police Department, and I'm over the traffic unit. I'm just here to provide a quick update on our enforcement efforts. In spite of the extreme heat, my guys and gals have been out there working really hard. Last month, they had over 2,400 citations and tickets and almost 100 DUIs they helped with. This month, they're on track to do the same. We're about 1,200 right now. And but more specifically, and I know you'd be interested in this, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, is our school zone enforcement. We've been working with schools opening and spending time there. For us, we've conducted over 150 stops in school zones, which some resulted in citations, some were educational contacts. We've also helped this summer train some of the SROs with radar so that they can run radar in their school zones at the schools they specifically work at. That allows us to have them as a force multiplier, and they can help when they know that their school needs help. So I just wanted to provide a brief update on some of the enforcement efforts and some of the back to school and school zone things that we discussed before.
Thank you so much. Any questions for Lieutenant Ryan? Lieutenant Ryan, I had one question, and this came in from a member of the public that emailed me. This was a one of the things that I hear a lot about is about cars parking illegally, blocking lanes, blocking areas, specifically blocking bike lanes. Is that something that if you see out there, of your folks are seeing out there, is that something you're ticketing or calling in? Or is that something that's more so that residents need to report it through, I suppose it'd be the non-emergency line to then get somebody out there to take care of that?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, yes, it's both. We do ticketing for people that are parked illegally. We've also done operations in some of the different districts and precincts. At the precinct's request, we've gone out and done some of those things. But also, we do encourage folks, if there is a continuous issue, to call the non-emergency number so that patrol officers, if they have time, can come over and deal with those things.
Got it. And I appreciate keeping an eye out for that. It's I've almost got hit trying to get around to somebody parked in a bike lane, and then I'm going into oncoming traffic. It's not a good situation. Samantha, go ahead.
Yes, I recently had experience with that actually. One of the roadways that leads to our neighborhood, I championed with the Phoenix non-emergency line and City of Phoenix to have no parking signs installed there because of parking on both sides of the road and making it very difficult to go through. So that is both through the Phoenix and the police department.
That's great. And that's maybe a question maybe for the last one, but was that through like Michael Velati who helping you with that? And in our new, I guess my question is.
No, this is my experience,
Oh,
not from the public. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
This is my experience.
Got it. Is that something that's in the purview of our new traffic calming engineer? Is that piece of it, or is that something that Michael still handles in terms of signage when we want to get some more clear signage about no parking.
Yes, I can answer that question. So Michael Bellotti will still continue more with the parking aspect. Joseph is going to work more in the traffic calming, so the speed hump and the speed cushioning program.
Okay. Got it. Thank you. Any other questions for Lieutenant Ryan? Thank you so much. We appreciate you being here. Hopefully you got the update about when the next meeting is. We always appreciate you being here. Thank you. Moving on to our next agenda item is our ADOT Highway Safety Improvement Program. This was something that was mentioned as a future agenda item by our own Randy Dittberger. And Randy did a lot of the legwork, and Carrie's here on his, we really appreciate you being here to come and present to us about what you're doing at ADOT and with the Highway Safety Improvement Program. I'm going to turn it over to board member Randy Dittberger to kind of take us through a little bit and just get us kicked off.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it. And I just want to say what a pleasure it is to be able to welcome our state traffic engineer to the committee meeting today, Mr. Kerry Cox. Thank you so much for being here. I would like to say that when it comes to traffic safety in Arizona, there really is no complete conversation without mentioning Kerry's name. He has been a factor in traffic safety for many, many years in Arizona and in Phoenix. And some of you may remember Kerry from his time in Phoenix when he led the traffic safety section in the Street Transportation Department. And he was recognized with an Employee Excellence Award back in 2006. That's a long time ago, but excellence awards increase in value over time. So thank you for that. Prior to his current role as state traffic engineer, Kerry was the state traffic safety engineer at ADOT. And one of his responsibilities in that role was managing the Highway Safety Improvement Program, which we'll hear a lot about today. I believe that ADOT's program, the Highway Safety Improvement Program, has a lot in common with the city's new roadway safety program. So I think one of the reasons I suggested having Kerry here is so that we can maybe learn from the way ADOT manages that program. So during Kerry's presentation, I want to challenge my fellow committee members to think about what sort of elements Kerry talks about that might be applicable to the city's roadway safety program that we might be able to adopt. So with that said, please join me in giving Kerry a big welcome. Vision Zero welcome.
Welcome, Kerry. We appreciate having you.
Thank you, Chair Hermes and Board Member Dittberger. I appreciate it. It's been a long time since I've sat in one of these chairs, and the circumstances were quite different then. So I appreciate the opportunity to come back. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Arizona Highway Safety Improvement Program as requested. I also do want to start by saying that as the former state traffic safety engineer and the former city of Phoenix traffic safety engineer, I do believe that Vision Zero is not only important, but it's vital, and it will ultimately result in the savings of countless lives, both now and in the future. But I do believe also that we are headed towards a bright future, and that we are working on a problem that is completely within our ability to solve. So just to give you some background on this, this is the number of fatalities we've had in Arizona on all public roads since 1925, when we started keeping records. And you kind of see not only the growth in fatalities, but if you were to remove the word fatalities, you would also be not wrong if you were to say this is the economy of the state of Arizona. Fatalities have always been very closely linked to the health of the economy, with the thought that as the population has more money in their pockets, they are exposed to the dangers of traffic more and more for various reasons. The one notable exception to that was the downturn that we saw in during the pandemic, during 2020 through 2023. Fatalities, rather than go down with the economy, actually skyrocketed, and we are just now beginning to recover from that.
We've seen a decrease in fatalities over the last 2 years, and we're continuing to see a slow decline this year. So we're anticipating that the numbers will come back, but we believe that they continue to come down. But we believe that we may be about to plateau. And what I mean by that is we've probably reached the point at which our efforts, traditional efforts of infrastructure and enforcement, have reached their limits. So the next step is to look beyond that. So the Highway Safety Improvement Program is a federal pot of money that all states participate in, and you get different amounts of money based on your population and the size of your state. Right now, the requirements for HSIP from the federal government is that the money be used to reduce fatalities and serious injuries on public roads. And that's important because we at ADOT weren't always distributing the funds equally. The Arizona HSIP has built or covers projects that are built in the state, obviously, but they're also primarily projects that are safety related and geared towards a couple of important factors, which I'll get to. At this point, we have about $55 million available statewide for funding of safety projects. That doesn't go very far, as I'll mention in a moment, but it does cover quite a bit of our safety desires. Typical HSIP project has the following characteristics. It is addressing a priority in the Arizona Strategic Highway Safety Plan, and that actually has to happen in order for it to be funded or eligible for funding. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. It's got to be data driven, and most importantly for most projects is it's got to be competitively competitive with other projects around the state and competitive by the benefit cost ratio. Oops. There we go. Okay. The Arizona Strategic Highway Safety Plan is the sort of the cornerstone of not only our efforts in the state to control and make the roads safer, but also to guide the funding of the HSIP program. The state sets priorities every 5 years, and unfortunately, our priorities have not varied. In other words, we're not necessarily making a difference. We are concentrating this time in the 2024 Strategic Highway Safety Plan on human behavior, vulnerable road users, which has been expanded to include pedestrians, bicyclists, and work zone safety, intersection safety, lane departure, and tribal areas. The HSIP project applications must address one of these emphasis areas. To get to the data-driven element of the HSIP applications, we rely on crash data. We are a data-driven state, and this is a heavily data-driven process. Most of the people in the room are familiar with the Arizona Crash Information System, which is our previous incantation of the crash data base that we create from crash reports received from all jurisdictions around the state. They are required to send them in to us, and about 100 of the 110 possible agencies do so on a regular basis. The system is available to local agencies such as Phoenix. I believe you guys do use it, and it is something you can query, customize your searches, and produce hotspot maps and various other data queries. Through this information, the state creates what's known as the annual network screening of high fatal and serious injury crash locations. And this is the most practical use of the ESIS and the crash data that we use in the state, or that we produce in the state. But it is by no means the only input. It is also not something that is required of HSIP applications. But we look typically every year at the last 5 years of crash data, and we develop a listing of various categories for the locations around the state, segments on the state highway system that have the highest number of fatal and serious injury crashes, and those get set as priority for the state. We also produce a subsequent list of intersections and other types of crash screening for local agencies and provide that to them, but we can't necessitate that they use the information or act. We rely on the states or on the cities and the local agencies to know where the priorities are and to act accordingly. Once we get the list of high crash locations, we then typically perform what are known as road safety audits. I know Phoenix has a pretty robust road safety audit program here, and I am highly encouraged by what they typically find. But we try and take the information from the network screening. We conduct an investigative review of the crashes. We go out to the field, look at conditions out there, how the roads are being used, and then we develop recommended countermeasures based on those findings, those visits. Countermeasures have also been developed further in recent years to include preliminary cost estimates and in some cases preliminary benefit cost ratio, so that if we make the decision to seek HSIP funding, we can then use the results and the recommendations from the RSA to begin the application process. So what we look for typically, and this won't come as any surprise because the city of Phoenix follows a similar process. When we look at our crash data, we look at, is there a pattern? Yes or no? If something is happening more than once a year or more than once in a certain amount of time, that could represent a pattern of crashes. We look for whether or not there is a solution. And it's important, this one is important because a lot of the solutions include things like changing driver behavior, changing road user behavior, which is not something we can easily do with HSIP funding or with infrastructure-only projects. And then finally, we look at whether or not those solutions are actionable. Can we do something about that? Can we rebuild the intersection so that it is operating better, so it's operating more safely? Can we perhaps change the signal timing? Can we put up new signs? Can we do things that are actually actionable? So then we move into what's known as the HSIP process, and this is something that we offer every couple of years to all of our state agencies and local agencies to try and get the best projects we can for the money. The HSIP process is, by the very nature of it, is fairly open. It's a federal program that Arizona runs, so we try and be as transparent with it as possible. Our HSIP funding is primarily from infrastructure funding. Right now, I would say 90% of it is infrastructure. Most of it, unfortunately, goes to SPAC treatment, with less than about 20% going to what we would consider systemic or system-wide. The countermeasures that are proposed must address fatal and serious injury crashes that are part of or that are referenced in the Strategic Highway Safety Plan. And then all the applications, once they are in, are ranked 1 to however many, based on the highest benefit cost ratio. Our typical projects run from about $250,000 to $5 million, but there's no upper limit. A good project is a good project, and if theoretically that one project came in that had a really competitive benefit cost ratio, there'd be no limit to what we'd fund up to, including the limit of that HSIP program for those years. The important thing, though, throughout all of this is that the projects have to be competitive. What I mean by that is we rank projects by one thing and one thing only, which is how much they benefit to society they will represent, what kind of improvement they will make in conditions on the road, and what will that cost be. The benefit to cost ratio really drives whether a project is going to be funded or not. Highest benefit cost projects are funded first, and then every other project below that will be funded as we have available funds for. The last time we did a call for project was the 24-26 HSIP cycle. All project applications that we received were funded. We had one that was withdrawn by the applicant, one that was rejected by EDOT for specific reasons. We programmed over $60 million for 66 projects. All the HSIP projects were designed in fiscal year 24, with the highest benefit cost projects being sent to construction last fiscal year. The program, though, is continuing to shift HSIP dollars from state programs to local ones. And what I mean by that, it gets to a comment I made earlier. Originally, the program used, for whatever reason, used to keep 80% of the HSIP funds in the state highway system and 20% given to the MPOs and COGs to run their own programs, which didn't go very far. So over the past, I'd say, 3 to 4 cycles, we have opened up the competitive bidding to all local agencies, all state agencies, and ranked them all equally based on benefit cost ratio. So that's allowed a shift in funding to more closely match the actual occurrence of fatal and serious injury crashes, which are happening primarily on roads. But there are problems with the HSIP program. As I mentioned initially, our traffic fatalities have gone historically, and they seem to be more closely coupled with the health of the economy in most years than with the amount of money we spend on our HSIP program. So the question is, we spend more than $1 billion, and are we making a difference? Are we actually improving things, or are we just treating the hotspots? So the challenges that ADOT is experiencing, and these are challenges that I think every public agency has, are many, but we're trying to get a handle on all of these. The first one is location. We're trying to figure out whether or not the locations that we're choosing are going to actually continue to be a problem, or if they are just a problem in the last few years. Timing. We want to make sure that when we identify a problem, we want to get the improvements on the road as quickly as possible. A good example is when we develop say, an intersection project. It may be 4 or 5 years before the project goes from identification to actual construction of the improvement. And in that 4 or 5 years, you have everyone going through the intersection with the same risk that you as the public agency have already identified. Money is always a problem, but I will say that the HSIP program and with the challenges we've had with inflation over the last few years, our costs have varied widely, and especially with the 4 to 5 year timeline, an initial budget that is developed for an HSIP application generally only goes up, which means that projects are hard to deliver and usually end up being scaled back. And then finally, causes. And that's the biggest problem, is whether or not treating an infrastructure, treating an intersection or a segment or even a series of signals is really getting at the root cause. And do we need to figure out a better way to spend the money and distribute it so that it does actually begin to start making a difference in traffic safety? But again, I believe all of these problems are on their way to being solved or are solvable either by ADOT or by our partners in the local agencies. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody has. Questions? I'll start with Randy.
Very great. Thank you so much. Very much appreciate your presentation. Some really good information there. I want to just hit on a few points that you made that I think are super important. On slide 4, you said all projects built in the state are designed and built to the latest safety standards. And I think that's very important. And I know I've also heard you say at other times, every project is a safety project, because every project is attempting to do its best within the limits of that project to improve safety. And I think that's a great way to frame the issue, because that is exactly what we as transportation engineers should be doing, is focusing on safety first. But what I want to ask is, even though every project is a safety project, every project is designed and built to the latest standards, does that mean that every project is a good candidate for HSIP funds?
Chairman Hermes, board member Didburner. It's a great question. The answer to your question is no. Not every project is eligible for HSIP, and not every eligible project is going to be competitive. Every project is a safety project in the sense that we are trying to make roads better. No one's designing roads out there that are knowingly dangerous. No one's designing roads out there that are going to create more problems than they solve. That may not be the primary reason for designing the project, but because they're designed to latest safety standards out of the gate, that means that every project is a safety project. HSIP projects, however, are somewhat different in the sense that not only are they designed to standards, and they are usually designed above nominal safety or minimum safety standards, but they are specifically designed and built to address a known safety problem that is resulting in fatalities or serious injuries. So, for instance, an intersection upgrade in the city of Phoenix, an arterial intersection where you are designing or bringing traffic signals up to the current standards. That will have a safety benefit that will likely result in fewer crashes, fewer serious injuries, and deaths. However, unless that can be quantified, it's not necessarily going to be eligible for HSIP. And probably more importantly, it may not be competitive with a project that, say, puts in a hawk signal at a location that's had several fatal pedestrian crashes. So that's what we mean by that. But I want to make sure that everyone understands the city of Phoenix, the State Department, the state of Arizona, spend a lot of money every year that does not get captured or covered by HSIP to make roadways safer. Even simple maintenance operations are safety projects. They're making the roads safer by removing debris, by cleaning signs, by getting vegetation out of the way. They're just not always recognized as that, and they're not always funded through the HSIP program.
Great, thank you. I think that is helpful clarification. I want to just try to draw some parallels between HSIP and the city's safety efforts. And because I think there are some really clear parallels, and I hope that others on the committee have picked up on some of these as we've been talking. But you talked about, for instance, the state highway safety plan. I think, do I have the language right? Highway safety program?
Strategic highway safety
plan. Thank you. The city has its roadway safety action plan, and I think those documents are very, very parallel in terms of trying to set a high-level framework for safety interventions in the future. So I think there's considerable parallelism going on there. You talked about network screening, and the city has spent quite a lot of effort conducting its HIN, high injury network, and I think there again is some parallelism because we're trying to look for those hotspots that might be good candidates for future efforts. As we move beyond that, I think the parallels become less easy to identify. And so I want to sort of get your thoughts about some of those. One is the process of identifying projects. And I know you talked about the roadway safety assessments. And so I want to see if you can maybe expand on that a little bit. How many RSAs does ADOT conduct in a year? And what it is, to what extent are RSA recommendations a source of potential HSIP projects?
Here, Hermes, board member Didburner, another great question. The RSA is a tool that ADOT uses and that City of Phoenix uses as well. And it's not the only way to identify HSIP applicant or HSIP candidates. However, it is a tool that we use primarily because we can get resources out to an area that we know is having problems. We can have experts take a look at the conditions and come up with recommendations. Most of the recommendations that come out of our road safety audit program or road safety assessment program don't require HSIP funding. Most of those assessments can be handled either through maintenance or minor roadway work, which is great because that means that they don't have to wait the 3 to 5 years for funding with HSIP in order to make a difference. The applications or the recommendations that do require more funding that we're able to bring to bear can be a little bit more easily fleshed out. So that will give the road safety audit owner, which is usually our districts, it will give the owner a better chance of the amount of work that will be involved, the ask that is needed for either P2P funding or HSIP applications, and the likelihood of success, because it will also give a sense that, yes, this is a great candidate for a project. It's going to cost you $3 million. However, it's not necessarily going to reduce your fatal and serious injury crashes in the area that you're looking for.
Yep. Thank you. That's very, very helpful as well. Another thing you talked about today was this issue of systemic treatments. And I think you mentioned that on the order of 20% of HSIP funding, less than 20%, I think you said, is dedicated for systemic improvements. Can you give us some examples of systemic improvements? And is it correct to say that systemic improvements are not typically evaluated using the BC ratio?
Chair Hermes, board member Dittmer, yes, I can give you a couple examples, even one from my time here with the City of Phoenix. When I was with the City of Phoenix, we had the opportunity through HSIP, through the ADOT program, to fund countdown pedestrian signals citywide, or CY, excuse me. Countdown pedestrian signals are something that is a proven safety countermeasure. You have them at, I believe, every intersection that is signalized in the city. That wasn't always the case. We were made aware of this pot of money that ADOT was offering, and we went and found all of our locations that had or that needed countdown pedestrian signals. The signal shop at the time, the City of Phoenix signal shop, was putting them in on new applications or on new signals. But the city has a lot of signals. Even back then, it had a lot of signals. So we offered this money for a systemic improvement to our traffic signals. What we were required to do, though, was to provide the number of fatalities and serious injuries that were occurring to pedestrians citywide at signalized intersections that would be helped by these. So we weren't necessarily looking at the benefit cost ratio of each individual location, just the greater benefit cost ratio of having countdown signals at all of the different signalized intersections. Another example that we recently completed on the ADOT system was the upgrading of curve warning signs along some of our horizontal curves on the interstate system. We were able to show that there was a statewide problem with lane departures, and that one of the countermeasures for that was the newer, larger, more visible curve warning signs. So we were able to, within ADOT, develop a statewide benefit of putting in a systemic program for upgrades of those chevrons or of those curve warning signs. And we're able to get funding for that program to install them on horizontal curves throughout the state.
That's great. That's exactly what I would expect to consist of a systemic project. And it's interesting to hear your story about the countdown pedestrian signal. So there was some data-driven analysis that kind of led into the implementation of that countermeasure, even though it wasn't a intersection by intersection basis.
That's correct.
would you consider a traffic signal rebuild to be a systemic treatment?
Typically, a traffic signal is going to be a spot treatment. If you were talking about things like corridor coordination or corridor progression, then you might get into a more of a systemic. But another good example of a potential systemic program that would be would involve traffic signals would be I don't remember how long ago it was. It was when I was with the city of Phoenix, the upgrade from 8-inch to 12-inch signal heads and the conversion of incandescent to LED lights. When those occurred, those were city funded. And the city made a decision that that was a safety program worth doing. There was also a side benefit of cost of or savings of electrical. But that was a statewide, or excuse me, a citywide systemic improvement to traffic signals that would have been eligible as a systemic improvement through HSIP.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Other questions? I've got a few, but I want to make sure we get it out to everybody. Other questions, including folks online. Yes, go right ahead.
Hi. I just had like a smaller question. You said earlier that a lot of solutions come down to the driver behavior. And I know we have like those digital signs that talk about like buckle up or drive sober, get pulled over, those types of signs. Are there any other ideas going on that combat driver behavior or like influence driver behavior?
Chairman Hermes, Board Member Rodriguez, another good question. So if I understand your question correctly, are there any or what other safety projects address user or driver or excuse me, road user behavior? There are a number. And in fact, there are some that are even eligible for HSIP because they rely on infrastructure to better inform the road user. A great example of that is a project that we're working in the city of, or excuse me, the state of Arizona. Right now, and you may be familiar with this from some of the test locations, but if you go up Beeline Highway to northern Arizona, you'll notice that some of the traffic signals around the way have yellow reflective tape around the back plates. It's called a reflectorized back plate. That is an infrastructure project that has got a pretty good benefit to cost ratio. They're very cheap to put in, but it directly addresses human behavior. The concept that our signals are somehow not visible enough to approaching drivers. The reflectorization of the backplate increases the visibility, and it gets right into the driver feedback loop. A lot of the other issues, though, that are related to driver or road user behavior are much harder to crack. Probably the best example, and the one that I wish I could solve anytime, but I wish I could solve it as soon as possible, is driver speed. Not necessarily speeding, but speed too fast for conditions. And that is the overwhelming majority of our fatal and serious injury crashes. And I believe it was still the overwhelming majority of fatal and serious injury crashes on Phoenix roads when I worked for Phoenix. There are a lot of countermeasures that can be installed to make roads drive less fast, but ultimately you're trying to change the behavior of an individual driver and increase the awareness, and that is a very difficult thing to do with infrastructure alone. It's a very difficult thing to do with enforcement alone, and it's very difficult to do with education alone. So we're always interested in new ideas and new ways of tackling that, but that is our number one problem in the state of Arizona, and I would argue it's probably the number one problem here in the city of Phoenix. Thank you.
I figured it was like a kind of a hard thing to combat human behavior in general, but it's good to know that there's like ideas going on out there.
You're welcome. Carrie, I've got a couple of questions as well. But I want to pick up on something you just talked about. The overwhelming majority of fatal crashes are caused by speed, and that my years on this committee, that's a conclusion I've come to as well. What are some of those things that you mentioned? There are some things that can be done. It's difficult, no doubt about it. But from a design perspective, what are some of those things that can be done to address that issue and maybe encourage a road user or a driver to slow down?
Chair Hermes, good question. There are a number of things that can be done. Primarily, and again, I look to infrastructure, and I want to make sure that I caveat this. There are lots of things that can be done to affect driver or road user behavior. And I want to make sure that we're clear on it's road user. Drivers are primarily the mechanism by which injuries occur, but road user behavior. They actually, ironically, are a lot of them rely on some of the things that are going to be pushed by your new school safety and your new neighborhood traffic representative, speed humps, school zone enforcement, or school zone signing. Are infrastructure solutions that can remind drivers that they need to slow down, or in some cases can physically result in them slowing down or they damage their vehicle. Some of the things we did when we looked at narrowing roads, traffic circles, traffic islands, things like that, to make the road either appear narrower optically or physically, or to require a deviation horizontally, such as a roundabout or mini traffic circle. Those are things that can be funded through the HSIP program, through an infrastructure project, and they're things that are measurable. In other words, you can say that before this was installed, we had this number of vehicle crashes or this amount of speeding. After it was installed, we have this. So you can demonstrate the before and after. Those are all good things. Other things are a little bit less clear, and that's why we tend not to fund them through the HSIP program. Driver education, road user education, for instance, those are great topics to do, but we can't necessarily show the effect of a program on any one area. I can spend millions of dollars trying to tell people speeding kills, or pay attention when you're walking and you're looking at your cell phone. If the numbers go up or down, I don't know that's necessarily as a result of that program. So I can't necessarily show the effectiveness of a non-infrastructure program. I'd really like to be able to figure that out, because I think that, as I mentioned during the presentation, we may be at the limits of what we can do with traditional enforcement, traditional infrastructure, and traditional education programs.
Thank you, Gary. I appreciate that thorough answer. I've got a couple more questions. You mentioned road safety audit. I was hoping you could dive into that just a little bit more so I can get a picture in my head. Is folks from ADOT go out to a specific stretch or intersection where there's been fatal crashes, and you're going out at different times of the day, you're taking notes, doing counts. I'm not a traffic engineer, but that's kind of what in my head, when you say road safety audits, that's kind of what I have in mind. Is that right? And is that done at each one of these proposed projects by ADOT employees?
Chair Hermes, it's another great question. We don't do road safety audits on every HSIP project. We try and do road safety audits on every project that is on the state highway system that we're looking for HSIP funds for. But the state runs somewhere between 50 and 60 road safety audits a year. I know that Phoenix has a robust RSA program through the MAG safety program. But road safety audits are exactly that. Typically, they're supposed to rely on people who are not related to the design that's out there today. And by that, you typically don't want to have the person who designed the road go out and take a look at how the road is functioning. But at its heart, the road safety audit is the only way that engineers or street departments or the city or the state DOT can know how their designs are being used. We do our best to determine the best way to move traffic and the safest way to move traffic. But an RSA is really where you go out and you say, okay, this is what the intent of this intersection design was, this segment design was. This is how people are actually using it. And by seeing how they're using it, you can actually, or usually, tell where the problems are occurring. Great example is offset left turns. We know based on how engineering and design what a good offset would be for a left turn. You want to make sure there's plenty of visibility for the approaching or for the vehicle waiting to turn left. But a lot of times when we design the intersection and put it on the ground, we find afterwards that people aren't actually using it in the intended way. They're pulling or they're stopping too far back so that they actually have a partially blocked view of oncoming traffic, which may mean that we have to try and shift them over by either striping or building little islands or things like that. But the RSA is really the best chance for people to see how the roads are being used and when they're being used in unsafely or when the use is resulting in numbers of fatal and serious injury crashes. The best opportunity we have to identify a possible solution and to try and enact that solution to fix it. We do run a pretty robust RSA program through the state. We look at, like I said, 50 to 60 locations around the state highway system per year. We also fund an RSA program that allows us to get consultants, independent consultants, to look at road safety audits or perform road safety audits in locations that are off the state highway system. And then independent of all of those things, if there are problem areas, City of Phoenix say, we also do go out as favors to colleagues, professional colleagues, to look at locations and give our 2 cents on what we would change or what we would recommend changing. Those are non-binding, usually very informal, but they are something that we offer to do. And we have in turn asked the favor to be returned with getting local agencies to come out and say, hey, what do you see in this intersection that we can fix? Things like that. But they are intended to be collaborative. They are intended to be independent. And they are intended to be to generate recommendations that we can then use and enact.
Well, I really appreciate the favor of you being here today. It was very much appreciated. Other questions from the committee? Anything else? Gary, thank you so much. Really appreciate the favor. And if there's anything we can, as a city of Phoenix, can do to repay the favor, be speaking for myself, all for it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair.
And thank you, Randy, for doing such great coordination and for asking Carrie to be here today. Okay, we have some, don't go anywhere yet. We have some public speakers here from the public to weigh in and to give some public comment. I'm going to go first to Abby Tomich, former member of this. Nicole's first? Okay. I'm going to go first to Nicole. Nicole Rodriguez, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can. Thank you. Nicole Rodriguez. Can you guys hear me? I hope.
Loud and clear.
Okay, good. First of all, great speaker. Carrie, thanks for coming down to speak today at the Vision Zero community meeting. I actually got to work with you a little bit as a community member about 10 years ago on speed humps in my neighborhood. And I really enjoyed the experience and working with you on that. And if, Chair, if public comments can be potentially answered with the questions I have. So I was just curious about the HSIP. If that program can potentially be used towards funding a program on speed inhibitor devices, because we were the committee was just talking about with Carrie Wilcoxon the speed issues statewide and the different types of countermeasures that are used, including PSAs, which I do agree PSAs are very hard to measure, but also we know that other than infrastructure PSAs and law enforcement, there are new and emerging, it's not really that new of technology, but it's becoming more common at the state level for these bills to get passed that will implement speed inhibitor devices on recidivists, egregious reckless speeders. And that is a solution that's been voted on in a couple states this year, this state legislation year, not in Arizona. It failed, unfortunately. And just wanted to hear a little bit from ADOT today to see if HSIP would potentially apply towards a program like that if the state were to pass something like a speed inhibitor device program, and also what ADOT, their thoughts are in general on speed inhibitor devices. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Before we go on to our next person, and let's go on to our next person, then we'll circle back with a couple of more questions for you, Carrie. But is Abby Tomich there, former committee member, Abby Tomich? Abby, go ahead. Yep, we got you.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming to this meeting. Another thing that I wanted to bring up is there's 2 annual events coming up, Week Without Driving from September 29th through October 5th, and the annual World of Remembrance for Road Traffic Victims scheduled for November 16th. I just wanted to see if Arizona Department of Transportation to strongly support these 2 events as they both relate to highway safety. And just echoing what Nicole was saying about supporting that legislation for mandating speed inhibitor devices, that is extremely important, and it also aligns with the highway safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. So, Carrie, could you touch on that about the? Assume you're familiar with the speed inhibitor devices placed inside vehicles. I understand other states have done them for maybe egregious or repeated speeders. People have been arrested for egregious speeding. Is that something that can be funded or is looked at all from HSIP? What are your thoughts?
Chair Hermes and don't remember the name of the person. I believe it's Ms. Rodriguez asked that question. I am familiar with the speed inhibiting devices that can be added to vehicles. In fact, I was an advocate of them, still am. They've been tested. They are fairly recent, even though governors have been around for many years. Speed inhibitors are things that are actually intended to tie the speed of the vehicle to the geographic location of the vehicle and the posted speed limit. And they're remarkably accurate. ADOT has a system similar to that on our state vehicles that can tell, for instance, when I go from a 65-mile-an-hour speed limit down to a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit within about 50 feet. It doesn't actually stop or slow my speed, but it will let my supervisor know that I was speeding. So it's self-regulating. What I think Ms. Rodriguez was talking about was those those automatic speed limiter devices, and I'm trying to remember the actual abbreviation for them, but they are features that are added to the car. I believe they're added to the electronic fuel ignition, and they will manually lower the speed of the vehicle automatically, so that you would never have to worry about speeding. There are ways to override, and several municipalities have, or states have started experimenting with them. A few years ago, we had someone from the New York City Street Department talk about an experiment they did. New York City has since moved to have those devices placed on all of their vehicles. And the state of California, I believe, passed a law, but I believe it was vetoed. I don't know that it has become law yet. But basically, the thought is that if you can have a certain percentage of vehicles, first of all, if you have the vehicle that the device is on regulated or have their speed regulated, then you're limiting the ability of the driver to speed. That doesn't necessarily relieve the person of driving too fast for conditions. It just limits the ability to exceed the posted speed limits. So that's one thing. The other thought, though, is if you have enough of these vehicles in the vehicle fleet or in the stream of traffic at any given time, then you'll have a regulating effect on the entire stream of traffic. So in other words, rather than having a single vehicle driving very slowly and cars passing or cars stacking up behind them, waiting for an opportunity to get around, you have an entire column of traffic that is slowed down by several of these vehicles that may have the speed governors. They would be funded if there are studies that show that they are effective. I believe it's a little too early to get peer-reviewed studies that show that they're effective at reducing crashes. But if they are, then that would be a good example of a systemic improvement. The counter to that, though, is the same counter that my own agency used when I recommended they be installed on ADOT fleet vehicles, which is there are times when, and I don't know that I completely buy this as Kerry Wilcoxon, the Arizona citizen and traffic safety nerd. There are times when people will say, I have to be I have to be exceeding the speed limit. Otherwise, I am an obstacle to traffic. And while that may be true, and there are certainly energy differences in speeding traffic, I'm not sure that it holds water. However, the concern was that the devices remove too much of a driver's ability to respond to traffic conditions, either get out of an emergency situation faster than the speed limit or keep up with the pace of traffic. Most of the agencies that have tested these devices do allow override, but that usually doesn't get mentioned in the discussion. So,
thank you, Gary.
Another question, I can't remember the person's name, about the National Day of Mourning for Traffic Victims.
November 16th, I believe.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes. I encourage people at ADOT to honor it, to think about it. But the state of Arizona, officially, ADOT does not take a position on it one way or the other. I'd love for that to happen. I'd love for there to be a statewide initiative that goes through, but ADOT can't advocate for things like this. It would have to come from the legislature, and it would have to really come from citizen requirements. But I think it is a good day to remember how dangerous moving or using the road is.
Agreed. Thank you, Carrie. Really appreciate it. Any other questions from the committee? Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Wonderful presentation. And thank you so much for being here. Moving on to our next agenda item is our 2024 Road Safety Action Plan Annual Report. We have Carl Langford and Reed Henry.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to actually tee up the staff a little bit today on this item, if that's okay.
Please.
First of all, I just want to say we're really excited to come here today to provide the RSAP annual report for 2024. I do apologize ahead of time. We are a little behind schedule. We usually have that out in the June to early July timeframe. I think when staff got it to me, being new, I had a lot of comments, and they didn't like me that week. But I figured if I couldn't understand what was on the paper, then the public wasn't going to be able to understand that as well. Though I had been in the department for, 8 or 9 months by then, I still felt that it was important that we put together a program and an annual report that the general public could read and understand. So I take the blame for it being a little bit late, even though I'm sure staff will be nice and say it wasn't all my fault. The other thing I wanted to mention, our intention was to publicly post it and get it out last week. However, when our executive team internal to streets looked at it, we still had some additional comments that needed to be addressed. So I apologize ahead of time that you didn't get a copy of it until yesterday. And so that was my fault, because I wanted to make sure that the things that we had commented on got taken care of And then I know it also came out confidential draft. We'd gone back and forth as staff, is it confidential or draft at this point in time? And so there's a little bit of confusion there. And so I'll take the blame for that. Easy for me to do since I'm going to water, right, Carl? But our intention is to be a little bit different this year because one of the things I've been hearing from this committee over the last year that I've been here is that you guys want more input into the things that we're doing and the things that we're putting out there. And so I was very intentional with staff that what I want is for you to be able to see the report and provide comments on it before it becomes a public domain document. Because we want to make sure that all of you get a chance to see it and input into it and make sure that what you're seeing as our vision is reflected in your ideas as well as ours. So with that, we're going to present the plan to you tonight. The plan is then to give time for all of you to review it in a little bit more depth and get some comments from you before we officially post it. With that, I think Carl's going to lead it off, correct? Oh, Reed's going to. Okay.
Good evening. Thank you, Director and Mr. Chair and committee members for the opportunity to share the draft 2024 Road Safety Action Plan annual report. So today we're going to have actually three presenters. I'm going to handle the introduction and the crash facts, and then Young Krapowski from Y2K, who helped develop the original Road Safety Action Plan, is going to provide some information on performance measures. And then we'll turn it over to Carl to wrap up the last three sections. So for those of you that don't know, the Road Safety Action Plan was approved by City Council back in September 2022. The plan's goal is to reduce fatal and serious injury crashes to zero by 2050. The plan is basically multidiscipline, multi-department, and public input in how we develop that plan. When we look into the plan, we identified 5 focus areas that we wanted to look at. So you can see some of these were very similar to the strategic highway safety plan that Kerry talked about in regards to behavior-related pedestrians and bicycles, intersections, and segments. Now, with each of those focus areas, we identified 3 objectives, which came along with 30 performance measures that we'll be presenting on. With the 5 focus areas, we also identified 41 strategies. So we identified strategies that we felt would reduce fatal and serious injury crashes throughout our system. Crash facts. So here we go. So you can see the yellow dotted line showing a trend downward, which is a good thing, right? The number of fatal and serious injury crashes has steadily declined since 2015. What you see there on the colored chart there is the blue. The blue lines indicate serious injury, and the fatal lines show fatal crashes. So when you're looking at the red dotted line, we are showing an increase in fatal crashes during this time period, or at least a trend. We haven't finalized the 2024 data, but the number of fatalities has gone down from the previous year. It's in line with what Kerry had in regards to statewide where crashes or fatalities that have been going down.
Just a quick question while we're on this slide. You say you haven't finalized the date of 2024. Is that so that possibly will change up or down? Is that what you mean?
It's all really kind of possible to change. So basically, when we're looking at the ACES that Kerry had talked about, the crash database that we have for the state, that's a live database. So when I go back like 2 years ago, I could have some changes in numbers and things like that. But I think ADOT did publish the 2024 data, and we're just finalizing that for the city. We do some additional scrubbing of the data as well. But I'm pretty sure that the fatal crashes is going to show a decrease.
Okay, but so as 2024 feels like a distant memory to me. But so it seems like we should have the data by now. We're in just about September of 2025, right? I mean, in terms of these numbers, or
yeah, we don't get the official data until typically 6 months after the year is concluded. So we don't really always have that data readily available. So that's part of the delay. But one of the things that we have implemented the past year or so is we have access to their database now, and we pull crash data on a monthly basis. You know, our only concern with that is quite often fatal crashes may take months to be put into the database. So we try to be very careful on when we post the annual numbers that it's pretty complete. So that's part of the delay.
Thank you.
Yep. Here's a little more of a breakdown of the charts of showing where crashes have gone up or gone down, whether they're fatal or serious injury type of crashes. So as we look at our baseline data, which is a 5-year time period, to the most recent 5-year period that we have, you can see that our KSI crashes have decreased by 13%. But during that same time, our fatal crashes have increased by 16%. And you can look at various graphs here. It's a little small, but if I pick out like signalized intersection crashes for KSIs, you can see it went from 1960 down to 1740. And that's one of the areas that we have been focusing some of our safety resources on, is reducing fatal and serious crashes at signalized intersections. Now, there's a lot of data here. I don't know if I need to go through all of that, but it is in the confidential draft that you do have. Here, looking at.
Sorry to interrupt. I have a question before you go on.
Sure.
Just curious, can you? Oh, this is Julian, one of the.
Julian, go ahead, buddy.
Go ahead. Yeah, thank you for going back to the slide. So it's just interesting to see the data. First of all, congrats on the 13% KSI crashes going down, and then why do you think there's an increase on the total crashes though by 16%, while we decreased the KSI?
The 16% is in relation to the total fatal crashes.
Yes. Why do you think that increase while we decrease with the KSI?
Well, I would say when there's a fatal crash, there's a lot of things that go into that. Fatal crashes are pretty volatile in when and where they occur. A fatal crash may involve someone wearing their seatbelt or not wearing their seatbelt. A fatal crash may be involved, a vulnerable user versus someone that's in a car. There's lots of reasons why you may have a fatal crash versus a KSI crash. I think a lot of it is still, Carrie kind of mentioned that there's a carryover due to the COVID experience where we did have a rise in there. So some of this data is still reflective of that, since our data is a bit late, that Mr. Chair had pointed out.
Thank you for that answer.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Julian.
Here, the top two columns, you can see that we have been spending resources on reducing pedestrian crashes. So you can see as an overall of fatal crashes, pedestrian crashes have decreased by 5% from our original baseline. But when you look at the motorcyclists, in some cases, people consider them a vulnerable user since they don't have a steel cage around them. The number of fatal motorcycle crashes has increased the total number of fatal crashes. When you look at bicyclists, that percentage of fatal crashes has remained the same during those two time periods. And then there has shown a slight increase in fatal-related KSI crashes of 1% from our baseline. Another area that we have been focusing some of our resources is at our signalized intersections, which are spot locations, where we've increased a lot of the safety features at those locations by putting in dual luminaires on each corner, larger signal heads, variable timing in regards to left turns. So you can see there's been a decrease in that. But if you have a decrease in signalized intersection, that means you're going to have an increase on segments, because it all has to add up to 100%. I would say this is my favorite graph uh, of all the graphs that we have in our documents, where we show how crashes kind of follow traffic volume. So if you look at the red line, that's a typical arterial within the city of Phoenix. And if you look at the gray line, you can kind of see between 5 and I think about 10 o'clock, that red line kind of follows that graph pretty closely. Now, when you get beyond, I think 6 o'clock, you can start seeing that there's an overrepresentation of crashes, both serious and fatal injuries, as well as pedestrian crashes occurring during nighttime hours. So one of the things that we have been looking at is that there's a problem there for pedestrians at night and also regular vehicles at night during the nighttime hours. Maybe that's the end of my presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, there we go. Oh, not too young.
Good evening, Chair and committee members. My name is Jem Kowski from Y2K Engineering. For the performance measures, over the past year, the Streets Department has been tracking the performance measures identified in the original Road Safety Action Plan. As was mentioned, there was 30 performance measures, and 26 of them have been tracked, and 24 are either complete or in progress. Just wanted to kind of share some of the color coding as well, that it shows green if the performance measure is complete or exceeded, red if the performance measure has not been started, or perhaps if it's a crash trend in the negative direction, and yellow will show if the measure is in progress but maybe either hasn't been met or is still trending in the positive direction but hasn't met the number that is set. So the system helps us visualize kind of where we're succeeding, where progress is underway, and where additional attention may be needed. So I'm going to go over these strategies and each objective one by one. The table that you're looking at here is in the plan, and what it is showing in the far right is the 2024 performance measure. And then the column just before that is the status of that performance measure in the previous year's report. So under general strategies, there are 3 objectives and 8 performance measures. The first objective was to implement this board and also create this annual status report. So those have been completed. The next objective is to reduce the crash risk on roadways by enhancing safety data collection and evaluation. And in this area, the city has completed the streamlining of the RSA process and developed the crash data dashboard to identify and rank crash locations. It's, as Rita mentioned earlier, the city has also integrated crash data from the ADOT database each month now, which is ahead of schedule. And we have not yet begun tracking the before and after evaluations of safety projects. So the third objective under general strategies relates to road safety within the city's transportation processes. There's a performance measure to integrate road safety review in the development of CIP projects and in private development projects. This effort is currently in process, with the city focusing on safety reviews for CIP projects and has not yet been started for private development projects. In the last row, the original Road Safety Action Plan estimated that road safety expenditures would need to rise to a level of approximately $60 million per year to achieve Vision Zero by 2050. And this could be a combination of dedicated local road safety funding that's currently at $10 million a year, as well as other transportation CIP projects that may integrate safety countermeasures, although this particular piece has been difficult to track. This also includes regional, state, and federal funding and other grants, which will be presented later in the presentation. Overall, this funding has continued to increase year over year, but the levels still fall below that 60 million per year mark. Now moving on to behavior-related strategies, there are 6 performance measures, and to reduce the number of KSI crashes involving pets and bikes through behavioral changes, a target was set to expand traffic safety enforcement programs by 10% per year. While the city continues to enhance its current programs, they have not been expanded by the 10%. And in 2024, the city held 6 bike rodeos, while the target was 12. The next objective is to reduce the number of KSI crashes related to speeding, red light running, distracted driving, and aggressive driving. And in this case, both targets were met. The first is that these types of crashes have been decreasing, even while the population has been increasing. The police department has also been involved with the West Valley Speed Enforcement Task Force, which deploy 2 to 3 times per month, and that exceeds the 12 times per year target. The next objective is to, in relation to efforts to reduce crashes related to impaired driving, and the police department continues to participate in statewide efforts around major holidays, and have not quite met the 18 times per year target, which was a stretch goal in the original Road Safety Action Plan. When we look at the crash statistics, the KSI crashes related to impairment have continued to decrease, so that is a positive. Under the focus area of pedestrians and bicyclists, there are 7 performance measures, and there has been progress made in implementing safety improvements at 13 schools in 2024, with the goal of reaching 20 schools per year, and so this should be ramping up in future years. In order to support the objective of reducing KSI crashes involving people walking and bicycling through geometric reconfiguration and systemic countermeasures, the city completed 11 mid-block improvements. So this didn't quite meet that 20 mid-block improvements per year. However, there are several more in progress in order to meet this goal of 20 per year in future years, and that will be touched upon later as well. One of the benchmarks was to reduce pedestrian-related fatal crashes by 10% per year, and unfortunately, as we touched upon, the pedestrian fatal crashes continue to rise.
What is a pedestrian safety toolkit? I know it's something to look forward to 2027 according to the slide, but what is that?
So some of the countermeasures that you have all been talking about tonight, like the leading pedestrian interval for traffic signals, installing the hawk signals at mid-block crossings, those are all solutions that support a reduction in pedestrian-related crashes. And so a toolkit would simply be a document or even a compilation of resources that would be Phoenix-specific on that designers and engineers, even outside specific safety programs, could review and look at and make sure that they're implementing those types of designs in their projects. Another example would be in transit-oriented development areas around light rail to reduce curb radii so that turning vehicles are slower, to implement the protected left turn arrows in those areas where those the permitted left turns may conflict with the walk signal. So it's simply a compilation of all of the countermeasures, which would have images that would show the application, which would have context and some design considerations as well. All right. So developing that toolkit is on the list for completion by the end of 2027 currently, but there are a lot of resources nationwide that can be used as a surrogate measure. For reviewing the gaps in pedestrian infrastructure, there is a project funded through an SS4A supplemental planning grant that is currently underway. And there is, and after that is completed, then a plan to implement those annual improvements will follow. And on the last slide, the city has been able to improve shade coverage at 80 transit stops in 2024, and that is in alignment with the city's climate action plan. Moving on to intersections, in relation to reducing KSI crashes at unsignalized intersections, the addition of an unsignalized intersection screening has been added to the high injury network, which does fulfill both the geospatial process and providing a list of priority intersections. Addressing signalized intersections has always been at the forefront of implementation and has continued to move forward with 3 projects completed in 2024 and 15 under construction. These projects typically take more than a year, which is why both the projects that are completed and under construction are tracked. Crashes at unsignalized intersections have been decreasing. The team did elect to measure this from baseline values of the original RSAP for some consistency. For improvements related to signal phasing or timing, the city continues to prioritize new left turn arrows and also completed a study with Northern Arizona University for how to implement and operate the leading pedestrian interval. And as was mentioned in an earlier update, they have been implemented at 4 new locations, and that could potentially expand in the future. Related to these segments, segment crashes have been going down, which has been meeting the crash reduction target. However, you'll see on the second line related to raised medians to reduce conflicts. Those projects have not been completed. However, you'll hear more about an upcoming project on Indian School Road that will incorporate median improvements. The next objective is to reduce KSI crashes by improving visibility and illumination. Tracking has not begun on this, but you'll hear more about plans for some of these roadway lighting projects later in the presentation. And when we track nighttime crashes, we have seen a reduction from the baseline that was set in the original plan. And now I'm going to turn it over to Carl Langford to review the key accomplishments from 2024 and kind of what's ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate the information you shared. Members of the committee, Chair, so now I want to touch really on the highlights and what we did in 2024. After that, really talk about where we're going in 2025 and go from there. So kind of some of the key things. So the report in 2024. So these are kind of some of the big things. We've seen an overall 13% reduction in KSI crashes as we've seen before. Compared to last year's report, last year that was 9. So we've seen that increase, which is what we're looking for. We have 38 critical safety projects that were completed in 2024. It is a little lower than the 64 that was completed in last year. These are kind of cyclical depending on when the design happens versus construction. Oftentimes construction takes a couple of years to find items. And then another key thing, we've seen 24 out of our 26 performance measures partially complete or completed at this point. Compared to last year's report, we had 14 out of 17. So we can see progress as we're proceeding forward with this RSAP plan. So here's a map, overall highlights the majority of the safety projects that were completed. And you can see there's several different types of projects. There's some signal rebuilds, there's some specific new signals, there's lighting improvements throughout. And one of the key things here is that we are kind of hitting out the city. We're not necessarily concentrating in just one area. We're really concentrating where injury locations are happening and whatnot, and we do see that it's kind of throughout the city that we're doing these projects.
Carl, but as I compare the map of here to our map of our high injury network, just really aren't lining up. The projects that you're talking about here, most of them are not in the high entry network. So how were these projects selected?
So these are all the projects that quote unquote have a safety benefit to overall. And again, they're more specifically traffic safety benefit type projects. So not necessarily a new development building out a new roadway, but street lighting, signal rebuilds because they build the signals to the standards or new signal aspects. and whatnot. And so these are really projects that are done for all the different reasons, not just our safety funding specifically. So they're projects that don't always align to the HIN. The safety ones specifically are on the HINs. And most of those safety projects are probably in design more so at the moment, and will be in future construction years, more of the stuff on the HIN. And there will be a slide that kind of shows that a bit later as well.
Okay. So these are all projects that are happening.
These are all
Not-
projects in 2024.
Got it. These are not ones funded with Vision Zero, $10 million a year.
Correct. Some of them are, but not all of them. Okay, so now some specific projects that we've gotten to. So in 2024, in December, we did install our 100th hawk. It wasn't too long ago when I first joined the city, we had less than, I think, 13 hawks in the city at that time. I've been here about 8 years, so that's a significant number. I believe we're actually installed here just less than a month ago, our 112th hawk at this point. So one of the key projects that we've done. The leading pedestrian intervals in 2024, that's when we completed the study with NAU, and 4 locations were installed in 2024 with the LPIs. So talking a little bit about funding and specifically the 10 million funding. So in 2024, and really this is our fiscal year 25, which runs from July 1st to 24 through June 30th to 25. You can see here the majority of our funding really is in construction. Several of the projects that move forward, quite a bit of it in design as well, components. There are some items that are in scoping type aspects. So some of these are our SS4A grant funds that I'll talk a little bit more on later as well, that do some of our planning and other components. So this is specifically the 10 million that we have for road safety action plan and where that funding kind of goes. And you can see several projects that are moving forward, and as we continue to progress, design will slowly get a little bit smaller, construction bigger, and it will fluctuate kind of year to year on that as well.
Carl, what is the difference between signal modification and signal modernization, and how does it relate to safety and preventing crashes?
Yep. So more than likely, the titles come across for when the specific project manager puts the project in. Modification versus modernization is probably just whoever was the PM at the time that wrote it. They're really just about the same. We're looking to rebuild the signals for improved safety. Some of the signals do require basically a complete rebuild where it's completely tear down and rebuild. Some of them do only require just some minor modifications to improve the safety components.
Is there, data out there that shows that rebuilding the signals is then preventing lowering crashes significantly after the modification or modernization?
So that's a great question. So one of the things with that, we have done that at several signals. We haven't quite gotten to the point where we have enough signals that we've done a kind of comprehensive study to see ourselves what's our benefit cost ratio. One of the things, so Carrie Rilkoskin talked about the HSIP, and that's where a benefit cost ratio looks into that. So there's different studies out there that have been done for different signal components, such as a flashing yellow arrow has a specific benefit cost to it, or it's called a crash modification factor that you look at. And what it does is through research, they figure out that percentage of the collisions, your fatal and serious collisions, that are going to be reduced by implementing this component. So those are some. Adding additional heads or traffic signal lights over every specific lane is a specific one. Adding additional illuminators at the crosswalks at the signal. So more often than not, our larger signals require 2 signals at each corner, or 2 lights, I should say, 2 street lights at each corner. So 8 total. A lot of the older standards just had 1 per crosswalk area. And those all have those crash modification factors. And that's how we come up with what's the benefit cost of the projects, for example. We are looking to do a study here in the next couple of years as we get enough before and after data on specific Phoenix, what we've done with some of these to see, hey, what's our crash modification factor that we're ending up with? Because oftentimes we're combining multiple items, such as the left turn arrows and the additional street lighting and the additional lights over the lanes. So there's multiple specific crash modifications factors that are being added all in one project.
I saw that, I think, on a previous slide, that's slated for 2026, the before after evaluation of whether, for example, signal modification is preventing crashes. That'll happen in 2026.
Don't know exactly which year we are looking to do it. We typically want to have 3 years of crash data before and after to really get enough data to kind of statistically show that it's significant. And 3 years after data is really almost 4.5, simply because our crash data takes a lag, as we talked about earlier.
I know Terry mentioned peer-reviewed articles, don't want to spend money on things unless they're peer-reviewed, data-driven, all of that. Is there anything peer-reviewed, data-driven that says that adding more lights over the street, like more actual signal lights, maybe there's 3, adding a 4th one, is going to reduce the number of crashes and fatalities?
Yes, there is. So when I talk about a crash modification factor, that's where those come from. Those come from studies that have been peer-reviewed, been reviewed by multiple people. When you go to the crash modification, I believe it's called the Warehouse. It's a online database of these projects and implementation items that you can do. They're all peer-reviewed. You can see different star levels. So the star level references how well of a study it was that kind of reference this. Did the study have enough data? Is it statistically sound? Things of that nature. And so we specifically look at 4-star and 5-star specific to make sure that we're looking at the peer review type data and the data that really is telling us, hey, this is statistically sound. We should get similar type collision factors as we apply these to our city. Okay, so to talk a little bit about the grants for 2024. So one of the key things that we're always trying to do is leverage our funding that we have, specifically our 10 million in safety funding, to hopefully go out and get grant funding to advance and do even more projects. In 2024, we got almost 3 million in funding. We've got 1 million that I'll talk a little bit more in the Safe Streets for All grant application. We got some funding through a Reconnecting Communities pilot grant program. We got a little bit of funding from the Governor's Office of Highway Safety. And then we have some funding as well for the HSIP programs that Carrie talked about previously. And so that's specific with 2024. Not as much as in 2023. We got several really large grants. I think that total was about $32 million. Again, as we go out and compete, I feel like some of these grant opportunities look at Phoenix and say, well, we gave you a lot of money last year. Maybe you don't get as much money. But we're always trying to leverage those opportunities to get as much as we can to take our 10 million and move it forward and do more with it. So, and then in 2024, the police did several traffic enforcement programs in areas that are identified through basically citizen complaints, officer awareness aspect, statistical data from the crime analysis unit as well. And then in 2024, we also kicked out the signs that were talked about previously, the yard sign aspects. So as Brandy mentioned, we printed about 2,500 of those. We currently have about half of those still remaining. So there's quite a few signs out there for people to still take and go and put in their yards to help educate as well people in the areas. So that's really looking at the key things that we accomplished in 2024. And this is kind of looking ahead in 2025. Again, we're about halfway through the year. So some of these things have been initiated and started that I'll talk about here next. So some of the key things in 2025 is really our Safe Streets for All grants. So I'll talk about several of them. We've applied to a grant every single year. We've been lucky to receive a grant every single year that we've applied to, different varying amounts. All of them are still in some form of design and or construction at this point. We'll talk about our general obligation fund as well, and then a little bit on automated enforcement program. So specifically here is our 2022 SS4A grant. So this grant here was really a planning level grant. We received a component for a speed limit setting process, also our high risk pedestrian plan and a high risk bicycle plan. These are some of those items that Young showed that were in gray that basically in future years we're going to kick off. That's where these will come from. So the toolkit specifically, the pedestrian risk is looking to help create that toolkit for us as well. And these are all anticipated to wrap up here at the end of this year, beginning of next year component. Both of these will come to the CAC and present what these plans are doing. They're kind of a supplement to our overall road safety action plan. So in 2023 is when we applied for our large re-envisioning Indian School Road project. And so this project did have its design kickoff meeting here just earlier this month. And so with that, they've done the kickoff. They told us that they anticipate having a public meeting sometime towards the end of this year, maybe beginning of next year. When they're ready for kind of public input, we'll have them come here and present to the Community Advisory Committee as well.
Is this appreciate that? There's a area of a lot of interest. We've been hearing about it, talking about it since 2023. Is this plan that we're looking at right here? Is this subject to change? I assume if you're talking to the community and coming back to talk to us, looking for input, is that right?
So yeah. So as we go out to the public, I mean, the plan really is conceptual at this point. You know, we identified a lot of safety items and certain aspects that we're going to do. One of the components they're going to do for it is a design. Let's see, a DCR. I can't remember. Thank you. A design concept report out of it that really identifies, hey, what is the overall, you know, we understand why we're doing this project. There's a lot of safety components, but what can we do with the project? What are it's more identifies the very specific. So previously we had a very high level planning document to kind of apply for the grant. This is going to actually figure out what gets built exactly on the roads. And yes, there will be components of public input with this as well.
That's great. I mean, that's wonderful. Looking forward to that opportunity. I just see that, you know, and I'm sure we'll drill into it more in the future, but the planned bicycle route is only about half of the length of this dangerous section. I was there this past weekend on this route, checking it out. You know, a lot of people have to get around on a bicycle to get to where they need to go. It's really dangerous right now. So look forward to providing that input.
Excellent. Okay, and then in 2024, we got an SS4A planning grant that really looked at identifying some corridors that we want to identify the projects. Really, the planning grant looked at doing a RSA, or a road safety audit that Kerry Wilcoxon talked about, but a very thorough kind of high level, or a lot more than a typical RSA, I guess is the best way to put it. And so this is something that's just getting underway. We received the funding not too long ago. The proposed locations here are 19th Avenue, Thunderbird to Dunlap, Northern Avenue, 19th to 7th, and Broadway Road, 35th to 40th. And some more information will be coming on that as we go out. There will be some components with the public as well. So, and then to talk a little bit about our GO bond projects, or our general obligation bond. In November 2023, there was an approved general obligation bond for the city. One of the programs in that was specifically implementation funds for our Vision Zero Road Safety Action Plan. So budgeted out of the general obligation bonds, we got almost $17 million. And so with that, we looked at our high injury network. We looked at locations throughout the Road Safety Action Plan that identifies components. Several of these projects have been identified through our pedestrian safety components and whatnot. So you can see breakdown of some of these projects. Quite a few of them are street lighting. So there's specifically street lighting locations where we know there's several pedestrian collisions that are generally happening at night, and locations where we know the lighting is mostly on one side of the road only. So it's looking to implement projects that will add lighting to the other side of the road as well and increase the visibility for everyone out there. Again, we have several signal modifications, signal improvement projects, and some hawks as well that are going to be part of this program.
Carl, who picked these projects? And is this subject to change? Are you looking for input here, or is this is in stone?
These are the projects that have been kind of selected at this point for the Go Bond obligation. They are projects, like I said, that came out of our high injury network, our high injury network components, where we've identified, fatal and serious collisions through them. Several of them were projects in kind of planning stages that our pedestrian safety office has been working on, that was looking for funding type components of projects. So it's a conglomerate of projects throughout for those areas, but projects that are of high need and rank higher on our high injury network components.
Yeah, I would like to see an opportunity for input from this body on what projects would have been funded from the Go Bonds. Street lighting, I mean, one, Carrie talked about, and which I agree, speed is a major factor. We, in the report, talked about Sundays where we see the most fatal crashes. Speeds, right? That's because we're not looking at kind of gridlock traffic. We're looking at high speeds on Sundays. October, a lot of people in October. That's when we see the most pedestrian fatalities. It's in October, right? It's not December or January when we have the least amount of daylight. It's when we have a lot of people here. Speed. The data that I've seen, and as long as I've been on this committee, to me, that's been the factor that's killing people out there, people going too fast. I'm concerned that the street lighting, I'm concerned that we're maybe painting with a bit of too broad of a brush here when we say people are getting killed from 6 to 10. No doubt that's what the data shows, but to me, that shows speed. That's when, it's after rush hour, people are going fast out there. It's not necessarily a lighting issue. It's maybe at some places, but it's other things. And I think I would like to see more of a mix of ways to solve that issue. Carrie talked about narrowing roads, traffic islands for pedestrians, medians, roundabouts, other ways to adjust the speed. My concern is that we're not going to get the bang for our buck here that voters are looking for on these Go Bond Vision Zero projects with just street lighting and primarily street lighting and signal modification.
Understood. That's your opinion on some items. Several of these, we hired some consultants to go look at these roadways to basically do a mini RSA, for lack of better terms, to look at where fatalities were taking place. Specifically, the street lighting ones were specifically with fatals more related to pedestrians. And several of these reports came back, and some of them told us, hey, here's a good location to install a hawk. Several reports came back and basically said, the pedestrians are throughout the corridor here. There's not necessarily a concentrated area. A hawk isn't necessarily a good source of item, but they're concentrated in the evening and nighttime hours. And street lighting was the recommended implementation. Street lighting did have a good benefit cost ratio with that as well. And so it was a project that we're looking to go for. With all of these projects, we want to make sure that we follow up and do kind of before and after studies to verify that, hey, what we're doing is making a difference in the roadway.
Last comment I'll let you get on.
Can I add?
Please.
Add a little bit to Carl, even though I wasn't here when we went for the Go Bond. The language that's in the Go Bond is very specific, and we would have identified in general what type of infrastructure we were putting in that. And so that might also drive some of what was here and the type of projects we can actually work on. And so that might be something when we have the next Go Bond that we want to look at that language that went into that, into the voters to make sure we're including these other types of things.
Yeah, I voted for the Go Bond. I don't remember it being that specific. I mean, it would be pretty broad of just safety, giving you guys a lot of flexibility. One last comment I want to get you going, but this is more of just for my fellow committee members as well as everybody else. When this committee started, it's a long time ago, it feels like, when Keeney was here, one of the things that we did was look at specific intersections, look at specific segments and we ask the committee members, hey, take a look at, go bike down to, or walk down to, or drive down to 27th Avenue or this intersection. Take a look at it, give us feedback about that. What do you think? Talk to people, talk to residents. That was really nice, and maybe something that we could look at doing again, so we can get input on specific intersections in the high injury network and segments, and get some of that granular input from this committee. Not a question, but just wanted to, I won't be on the committee forever. I'm cycling off in the not too distant future, and just wanted to kind of pass on some of that institutional knowledge of something that the committee's done in the past, and I thought it was a pretty good idea.
Excellent, thank you. Sorry, slight technical difficulties here. Thank you. Okay, so this slide, this is the slide that you saw. I believe it was the last presentation as well, or last here 2 months ago. This is our roadway safety action plan, kind of our fiscal budget for fiscal years 25 through 30. Now, we talked about 10 million per year, and you see several of these years have quite a bit more funding. So all the projects highlighted in yellow are projects that have additional funding, some of the different grant funding. Quite a few of them are our SS4A components. Some of them specifically are our HSIP, which is what Carrie talked about earlier today. And these are projects where we've used our funding to leverage to get additional projects as well. And you can see here we have quite a bit of funding throughout here. So, and then to talk a little bit about automated enforcement. So in October 24, Phoenix Council approved an automated enforcement program as part of the citywide Vision Zero action plan. We're looking to have red light running cameras at up to 10 intersections, 4 mobile vehicles, and 4 portable towers for speed enforcement. With that, we're working currently on that. We're currently in negotiations with the vendor on that component. So again, as that proceeds forward and as we get to a point, we'll be bringing more information as to what this is and how the program will function as we move forward. So, and with that, that concludes the presentation, and we open it up to questions and discussions.
One quick thing, and then is just more so on what Director Kelso said. I would like to go back to the way we've done it in the past, in terms of whether it be June or August. And I get people are very busy, totally understand that. But I would like to provide the report to the public and get the report out to the committee, a little bit more in advance to digest it, but especially get it out to the public. I don't think there's any reason to be confidential, to not provide the public can understand this is a draft and that might change. And if it does change, we'll let you know. But I still think to build trust with people, we've got to give them more information and not withhold information from them, especially about where we're spending money and what the data is. So I'd like to go back. I thought it was well done in the past. Would like to see that return the way we've done it in the past. Hopefully in June, but I get people are busy. If not, at least in August, with providing the public the report so that they can come and to this kind of meeting and ask questions, provide input. With that, I'm going to open it up to questions from the committee. Randy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much, City Staff and Young, for the presentation. It was very helpful. I particularly appreciate the fact that the committee will have an opportunity to comment on the draft. And so I will therefore not make vociferous comments here today, but rather just kind of give you some of my high-level observations. First, I would like to, we talked a little bit about RSAs today, road safety audits. Kerry talked about road safety audits, and I believe he said that ADOT is in the practice of doing 50 to 60 per year. I'd like maybe if the city could give us a little bit of an understanding of what the city's practice is with RSAs. Carl, you talked about that a little bit in your remarks. But to sort of understand to what extent RSA recommendations are providing candidates for potential future safety funding.
Yes, so as far as RSAs, the majority of our RSAs we actually do through the Maricopa Association of Governments. They have a program that identifies or that works to do RSAs. They hire some consultants, they're outside agencies to come in and look at and see and observe what's taking place. For the majority of those, MAG specifically looks at, they create a top 100 highest crash risk intersections throughout the MAG region. City of Phoenix has, unfortunately, the majority of those intersections as well. And so as they come out and do that, we work with them on identifying which ones and whatnot. We'll be continuing to looking at our high injury network to see what those ones are. Some of the components is that oftentimes the ones that are high up on the MAG list, we already have different funding for them. Either they're in some kind of design, or maybe they just recently got constructed, or different components. But several times we're down in the, quite a ways down through the list, looking at projects to make sure that we're not duplicating efforts that the city's already completed.
Yeah, thank you. That's helpful. And I guess one thing that I didn't notice in the report was a mention of RSAs, and so maybe I missed it. And to be honest, I haven't read every single word, but I think the city's practice on RSAs is something to be really proud of, and so I think that is something that the report might want to highlight. And before we leave that topic, maybe I could just ask if you could clarify what the city's process is for once an RSA is complete and you have a set of recommendations, what's the city's process for reviewing those recommendations and sort of deciding on how you're going to take action, if you're going to take action on those recommendations?
Yeah, I can talk some to that. So as Carrie mentioned, quite a few of RSA recommendations oftentimes fall within maintenance or programmatic type budgets. And so let's say a recommendation is, hey, you're missing a street light in this area. The city does have a program that identifies missing street lights. Unfortunately, it is a little bit of time to work through that program to get it installed. But so areas that we have programmatic funding to, the RSA makes a recommendation, we apply to that specific funding, and it makes its way through the list. Typically, the city has quite a bit of lists of different items and whatnot. Some of the large items that come out, so oftentimes it might be, hey, rebuild this signal, do a signal infrastructure. That would be something that would fall into programmatic aspects with our newer road safety action plan funding. So we'd look to say, okay, where do we have funding that we could potentially apply that to?
That's very helpful. Thank you. I'd like to turn for a moment to the list of projects that is in the plan for 2024, which you showed on the slide a little bit ago. It's the 2025 budget allocations for the $10 million of RSP funding.
What page are you on, Randy?
I'm on page 18.
18, thank you.
I guess I have a couple questions about this list of projects. And one is, during this committee's last meeting, we talked about benefit cost ratios. And one of the things that I heard from Carrie today is, in fact, if I get the quote right, there's one thing and one thing only that's used to rank or prioritize a project, and that's the benefit cost ratio. And so I think during our last meeting, we talked about benefit cost ratios, and the city said you have been able to compute those for some projects. But I guess my question is, do you have benefit cost ratios for the projects that are on this list?
We have benefit cost ratios on quite a few of them. We don't necessarily have them on every single one. A lot of our early RSAP stuff, we identified places that had very much a higher number of fatal and serious, and they kind of ranked high on our RSAP list. We were in the effort to move forward fairly quickly. So we didn't necessarily go through the effort of the benefit cost ratio because we weren't applying for additional outside funding or items that needed that. We knew it was a project that needed to happen. We knew there was a serious issue there, several fatal or serious collisions. And so we moved forward with design. It didn't necessarily complete a full benefit cost analysis on those.
Okay, well, and I'm not disputing that, and I know from my time sitting in the chair at public agencies that there are many projects that you have a gut feeling really need to be done. But one of the advantages of the benefit cost ratio is that it can communicate to others that fact. And so I would highly encourage the city to be more forthcoming about the practice of computing benefit cost ratios. Again, going back to Carrie's quote, there's one thing and one thing only that's important in prioritizing these projects, and it's the BC ratio. And I don't think I saw anything, not even one mention of BC ratio in this report. So that was, there's a discrepancy, there's a disconnect there. So I would encourage the city to think that through a little bit. And part of the reason this is potentially concerning is, if I'm to play devil's advocate, you see a list of projects like this and it has a lot of signal modifications, it has some signal modernization. Signal modification, we don't really know what that means. It could be a lot of different things. There's a lot of ways you can modify a signal. Some of them might help safety, some of them might not really be intended to help safety. We just don't know. And so the devil's advocate view of this list may be the city has a whole bunch of things that they want to do, and they want to try to use safety money to get them done. I would encourage the report to do everything it can to dispel that notion, because I think the city has every intention of spending this money on the projects that are the most beneficial and the most likely to reduce fatal and serious injury crashes. But the report has to really sell that. And if we're just getting a list of projects that are mostly signal projects without real whole lot of detail on how those projects were selected and how many crashes they're expected to reduce, it kind of undermines confidence that the city is using the money in the most effective way possible. So that's maybe more of a comment than a question.
Okay. On this, just staying on this one, page 18 here, that 2025, the modification, I'm going to use modification and modernization interchangeably. I think you gave me that freedom, Carl. Are those, and I believe, although tell me if I'm wrong, I think on the construction side, I think most, or at least many of these on this page are in the high entry network. Is that right?
Yes, the majority of these are in the
majority. So when we're doing the modernization or modification, because these are in the high entry network, are we implementing leading pedestrian intervals at each one of these new intersections?
I don't know for sure if the leading pedestrian interval is part of that. We are making it so the intersection is capable of those components, but I can't say for sure as the leading pedestrian intervals. I can't answer that for sure.
Okay, so maybe get back to me on that one.
Yes, we'll get back.
That's fair. Thank you. I know you're getting asked to do a lot of presentations, both Carl and Reed. We appreciate you being so versatile and helping us out. Other questions from the committee? Other questions?
Real quick.
Yes, go ahead, please do.
So in a previous slide with the goals that were set, I think you were presenting them. I think it showed a pretty significant decrease in fatalities for unsignalized intersections. So I was just wondering, what was the what type of work were you doing on those unsignalized intersections that caused that decrease?
Typically, when we're looking at the unsignalized intersections overall and the data there, when they become signalized through the city's program, that is actually solving some of the issues that are happening with some of the turning movement crashes at those intersections. So adding a traffic signal is a safety benefit in itself.
Other questions? I have one more, then we'll go to public comment. For Carl or Reed or Young, the motorcyclist data is quite horrifying, and I don't know if there's any other way to put it. It's quite scary, and reading it, I mean, both looking at motorcyclist data and young person data is quite scary, to the point where any young person who has a motorcycle, I just want to talk to them and show them this report. What can we do? I really don't know. What can we do specifically to target some of these folks who are really at high risk of, I'm talking about motorcyclists specifically. What do we do to reduce the fatalities of motorcyclists, especially young ones, where just if you are age 18 to 30, according to the data, and you are riding a motorcycle, you are really in trouble statistically. What can we do? Has there been any thought about this? What can we do to help bring those numbers down too?
I'll try to take a first stab at this, and maybe somebody else has an answer. Motorcycles are one of the aspects that is challenging because they are in the environment where vehicles exist, and yet they operate quite a bit differently than a vehicle. Their ability to go from a stopped condition to a very fast condition is drastically different than your typical car, as an example. One of the things several years ago, we looked at several intersections that had motorcycle issues with them, and we ended up putting a bunch of signs that were warning, motorcycle warning signs, basically. And again, that's the one thing that we can kind of do is infrastructure. But I've asked we've driven through some of those intersections, and I asked my teenage son, "Hey, does that sign do anything for you?" And he's like, "Do what? What sign?" Aspect. A lot of it really comes back down to behavior more so than anything else, oftentimes with the motorcyclists. Some of it does come back to training. I haven't seen any data that really emphasizes infrastructure type components that really improve motorcycle items, because more often than not, it is kind of a behavior related component to it. But that's my best answer. I don't know if anybody else has a answer as well.
I can add to that. We've been seeing this trend statewide and in other jurisdictions in the Maricopa County region, and there are several external factors contributing to this. In general, the motorcycle registrations has been on the rise. People are choosing this as a vehicle to ride. Education is a key component, but many of the riders of the motorcycles aren't getting the motorcycle education driver's license endorsement on it. So that's one key component. We've also seen the laws change where lane filtering is now allowed for motorcyclists, where they can pass through slower vehicles to get ahead at a traffic signal. That became allowed at the end of 2023. So we're now seeing it in our crash data for that purpose. But what happens is when a motorcyclist gets to the front of the queue, now they're bypassing all the congestion and they're in the gap that vehicles in the approaching lanes are typically using to turn. And so they're then striking the motorcyclists, and our vehicles are getting heavier, speeds are higher. So there's a lot going against motorcyclists in general. They're taking that risk. At a state level, we don't have a motorcycle helmet law for adults. It only applies to youth. So that's something that the city of Phoenix doesn't necessarily control, but could be looked at a state level.
Thank you so much. I mean, I see why motorcycle riding is on the rise as well. I mean, at the same time, cars are getting heavier and faster and more blind spots. They're bigger, and which means motorcycles are harder. It takes time and effort and slowing down to see them, but the cost of car ownership and vehicle ownership is skyrocketed. And so if you're young and you need to get to work and you can't get to work in any other way, I understand why people are turning to bicycles. Also bicycles, but motorcycles as a way to affordably get to their jobs. So it's a challenge. So thank you so much for your answers. I really appreciate it. And unless there's any other questions, I'm going to go to go ahead, Rain. Oh, Julian, sorry, I didn't see your hand there. Thank you so much, Randy. Julian, go ahead, buddy.
Thank you, and thank you to the presenters for that report. Very detailed, and also I think it raises a lot of questions. But my first I have a comment. I did see that there was like a 4% on bicycle accidents, and so hopefully between now and the next report, we could all keep that in mind and think of ways that we could contribute to decreasing that 4% to hopefully zero. That would be the ideal plan or goal. So how do we keep pedestrians and bicyclists more safe as well, and of course motorcycle users? My question is more broad. When I started being part of the board, I think there was data presented that we were one of the like top three of the states compared to the rest of the country's death mortalities. We were like one of the top states. So with that decrease on the overall crashes and death mortalities by 13%, I'm wondering if anyone in the department knows if we're still in the top 3 with the highest death mortalities as a state. And if we're not, if we are, I'm wondering what other big cities are doing to decrease their death mortalities even more than we have. I don't know if that makes sense. If not, I could rephrase it differently.
Who would like to take Julian's question?
I can try to answer that. So as far as when we first created the report back in 2022, we did find a statistic that showed that Phoenix was in the top 3. I believe it was specifically with pedestrian fatalities for the city. Whether or not that has nationally changed, I haven't seen another national report that shows us somewhere else at this point. So that's something we would have to research and see if there's a more national data that is for that. As far as nationally, I don't know for sure. I would anticipate we're still in very much near the top, unfortunately.
Thank you. Julian, anything else? Any other questions?
No, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we're going to go to our public comment, and we'll start with the folks here in person. I'm going to start with Nicole Sanderson. Come on up to the podium.
Hi. So I am expressing a concern that the RSAP specifically paints a bit of an optimistic picture. So I was just looking at that article, Phoenix, if we're looking at large cities with over 750,000 population, we're the worst, the deadliest for going from point A to point B. And frankly, the US as a whole has a really bad ranking globally. So we're the worst among the bad road safety countries. So what I got from ADOT was 93 pedestrian fatalities last year, 2024, 15 cyclist fatalities, 265 total traffic fatalities in 2024. And that baseline really, I think, demands a different scale of response than what's outlined in the RSAP. Being a populous city is supposed to mean more taxpayers, more funds to use to have nice things. So if we're doing the worst among big cities, I think that really indicates a deep and chronic problem. The RSAP should foremost be confronting those deeper root causes of unsafe streets, like land use patterns, development restrictions, and other laws that force people into long, fast car trips. So we know that we won't ever be able to pay for enough hawk lights, well-designed intersections, and new sidewalks to make all of our streets safe, especially for vulnerable road users. Phoenix pedestrians are always going to be crossing mid-blocks as long as the legal crossings are so far apart as they are. But to lift to a better design standard, it's just cost prohibitive. So thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. I have here in person, but I think she is actually virtual, is Abby Tomich. Abby?
Yeah. So one key goal that I noticed of the high injury network wasn't seemed kind of foggy how a lot of this related to the high injury network. So one key goal that should be included in the RSAP that will actually reduce KSI crashes involving people walking and bicycling is to adopt benchmarks that require 50% of high injury network to be updated to include those high visibility crosswalks that we talked about by 2027. And I also wanted to address the serious breakdown in transparency and accountability when it came to the Road Safety Action Plan. This report is usually released in June, but now it's overdue, and even more concerning is that it hasn't been shared with this committee in advance or the public at all. That lack of communication undermines the entire role of this committee and erodes public confidence even more with the Streets Transportation Department. And one thing I noticed was you keep calling that the Road Safety Action Plan draft confidential, even though it's clearly a public document. Withholding it like that goes against the principles of Vision Zero, which is supposed to prioritize openness and measurable progress. So that's something that really needs to be thought about.
Thank you so much, Abby. I'm going to move on next to Nicole Rodriguez. Nicole.
Hi, thank you, Ed. I want to echo what I heard from Nicole Sanderson and Abby Tomich. The plan, even in draft mode, we've seen with other city departments, draft plans are available to the public. We've seen it even with the climate action plan that's currently circulating. Also with Dave Homula's heat mitigation plan, there's opportunity for various committees to weigh in on that. And this one committee should have fair and equal access to public information, as well as us, the public. I think it's pretty disingenuous to call it anything confidential. So with that being said, I really want to reiterate that you guys do have the power to bring this up to City Council and really review the bylaws in RSAP. Benchmarks that you guys have, because from my understanding, you are supposed to be providing feedback on these projects ahead of time. I do want to mention something about street lighting real quick. You know, I saw some sections in there for street lighting, and Carl had mentioned, you know, oh, street lights are on one side of the road, and we're seeing the incidents of pedestrians occur on the side of the road that doesn't have the street lighting when they're crossing. It won't really make a difference when you still put up those tall, non-directional street lights. Countermeasures for lighting for pedestrian crosswalks actually state that those the lighting needs to be very directional on the crosswalk itself. So we need highly visible crosswalks, not diffused lighting across streets. That actually hasn't been beneficial even in areas that have street lighting on both sides of the road for pedestrian safety, by the way. So please adhere to those concepts when we're talking about lighting. It's usually going to be shorter lights that are more directional across the actual pedestrian crossings. But with that being said, I saw sections that were recommending street lighting, and there's actually zebra crossings. And why are there not hot crossings going in at those locations as part of these rollout plans? So a lot of questions are in mind. It's my first time seeing it, and I think it's pretty unfair for you guys and us to first time seeing it. And I'm going to still have a lot of questions afterwards. So thank you,
Nicole.
I guess my time's up. Okay.
Yes, thank you. Moving on next to Stephen Alisana. Steve? No longer on the line. Okay. Okay, that is the end. Is there any other questions from anyone else on the committee? I just had one question about kind of still staying on the projects. I know in the past we've had a presentation to this group about the Phoenix Can project, and I know we've done that, I think, for 4 villages: Central City, Alhambra, I think South Phoenix, and another one I'm forgetting right now. But Phoenix Can, for those who haven't been on the committee as long, it's a program that kind of brings community folks together to make recommendations about pedestrian walkability, safety, how to make those villages connected and walkable. And I mean, the clear picture that I get from the road safety action plan update is we still have a huge pedestrian safety problem, and a lot of people still getting hit and killed. My question is, Phoenix can recommendations, which I have not seen, but I understand that this community leaders came together and put a lot of work and effort into this Phoenix Can program. Were any of the Phoenix Can project recommendations considered for funding as either part of the Vision Zero funding or as part of the Go Bond Vision Zero funding?
Chair, members of the subcommittee or the committee. No, we haven't actually finalized the list for the Phoenix Camp projects for any of the villages. We're still working on the first two villages. And then we will bring that to council for approval, and then we can inform this committee of what those projects will be too. But they do not include projects that are part of Vision Zero or the Geobond.
Yeah. What's the timing on that? Because I know it's my sense of time can be off, but it feels like quite some time ago when the Phoenix Can connectors got together and gave input and made recommendations for Central City and I think South Village especially. Like those, it's been a few years. So what's the timing when that's going to come to council?
We're hoping for those first two villages by the end of the year.
By the end of this year, okay.
Yes. And it has been a little bit delayed, but that's what we're still trying to. It's a new program. We're still trying to figure out how we're going to develop those projects. That's what's taking the time. But we're getting close to finalizing those projects, and that should be by the end of the year.
Got it. Keep us posted.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you so much. We're going to move on to our next agenda item, which is future agenda items and requests for future agenda items. This is where any member of the committee can request anything for a future agenda item. A good example of that was our committee member, Randy Dittberner, requested this ADOT Highway Safety Improvement Program as a future agenda item. We had it today. So we always appreciate our committee members having, we want to try to, as best as we can to talk about and have presentations about the things you want to hear about and items you want to discuss. So with that in mind, any future agenda items? Go ahead at the end and then we'll go to Randy. Go ahead.
I would request for a future agenda item some more research into temporary infrastructure to test out certain road safety implementations. Like there's this company called Vortex Technology where they build plastic molds for roundabouts and certain intersections, which I feel could be a very good low-cost way of testing out improving pedestrian safety, road safety, any kind of safety. And there's some more ways of, that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much. That's a great one. I saw Randy's hand go up. Go ahead, Randy.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to renew a suggestion that I made in an earlier meeting for a discussion about crash modification factors. We talked about those a little bit today, but I think it would be beneficial for the committee to have a little deeper understanding of what CMF is and how they're used in crash analysis. I think that's probably a 10 or 15 minute discussion, and I think it would add a lot of value to future agenda items where we're talking, as Carl did today, about CMFs and how they're used in safety analysis. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Future agenda items. Future agenda items. I've got one, and we have. I think somebody mentioned it. Might have been somebody in the public. We have upcoming a week without driving, where it's September, I believe it's the 29th through October around 4th, and a lot of folks, elected officials and appointed officials and other folks who are working in this space are taking a pledge to do a week without driving. and to be a road user maybe in a way that you don't normally do, on foot, on a bus, on a train, on the light rail, and to observe the built environment, see what we can do. So I'll be participating, encourage other committee members to participate, and maybe a future agenda item to see what your thoughts are and what your experience was at that week without driving. So with that, I think that is, make sure I've got everybody's. Any other future agenda items? If not, thank you so much. Samantha, did you have something you wanted to say? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to take a moment to acknowledge and actually thank City of Phoenix Traffic Department. Right after the last meeting, I requested the team to look at one of the intersections because it was experiencing more crashes and too many near misses. Simon in particular, like he was there the next day after I asked, I brought this to their attention, and he kept me apprised on what's going on there, what the city can do. And he actually, within a month of me asking him to take a look at it, he provided some improvements there. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you. And thank you to everybody from the Streets Department for staying late with us tonight, for educating us, and for doing everything you can. Be your own Vision Zero safety advocate. Go slow on the way home, and have a good evening, everyone.